Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special edition of Jordan and Drew, the Sports Crew, the Big East football season recap we got for you guys today. We're talking some Big East football. We've only talked Big East volleyball so far. We briefly mentioned some Big East football before. My co-host has made a prediction about a Big East football team getting shut out by an EWC team, so that didn't go well, but enough of that. No Jordon Lawrenz today. Who was the co-host who made that joke? And then me being Drew Skyberg. And then, we got Luke Schrader on from Howard's Grove, and he's going to be our Big East football connoisseur today. He's going to be our expert. He's going to talk about Big East football teams with us. So it'll be some good fun. And Luke, how you doing today?
Good. How are you, Drew?
Yeah, I'm doing great, Luke. And Luke himself, he was actually a quarterback for the Howard's Grove team. So is there anyone you want to shout out, Luke?
Someone to shout out from when I played or who plays right now?
Yeah, from when you played.
Oh, man. I have to probably shout out Caden Brumstead. He was my center for 2 years, put in a lot of work. I always felt safe when we had a run play behind him. So I'd definitely say Caden Brumstead.
We had to ask who his favorite player was because, of course, I'm rooming with the one and only Alec Lindstrom from Howard's Grove. We had to see if he would have said his name. Sadly, he didn't. So that's that. Yeah, so like I said, Luke was quarterback for a few years there at Howard's Grove. Great player indeed as well. And now he's out of there, but now we got his brother's playing, Jack Schrader, and you'll hear his name later in the episode for sure, because in this episode we're going to talk about the Big East Conference as a whole, and then with Luke being from Howard's Grove, we're gonna do a little deep dive into the Howard's Grove season, how they fared in the Big East this year. They finished with a 4-5 record. We'll get into it later in the episode. But yeah, it'll be some great fun. We're going to talk some conference awards as well for the Big East, and we'll talk about some of the playoff matchups left. It's going to be a Big East themed episode. So let's get right into it. The Big East Conference for the 2021 regular season featured 3 teams who finished 6-1. Cedar Grove, Belgium finished 6-1 in conference. Hilbert 6-1 in conference. Reidsville 6-1 in conference. And Luke, is there any one of these 3 teams that stood out as really the top dog, you think?
Yeah, I would have to say Reidsville. Just because they did beat Hilbert, and I just think that offensively they had the best combination of run, pass, and they could just kind of do everything. Out of those 3 teams, I did only watch Cedar Grove. I did not get to watch Hilbert or Reidsville this year, and Cedar Grove didn't impress me how they have in the past.
Okay, and then did Cedar Grove Belgium end up winning with like a tiebreaker? Was there what was the tiebreaker? Do you know? Because were they just all 3 conference champs?
I couldn't tell you that, but what I do know is that Hilbert ended up getting the 1 seed, and Reidsville got the 2 seed in the Division 7 playoffs.
Interesting.
And I found that very interesting too, considering that Reidsville did beat Hilbert in the regular season.
Yeah, so they really liked Hilbert there, it sees. And then
I don't know what went on that seating meeting, but someone had something against Reidsville, I guess.
And then we saw Cedar Grove Belgium they got the 2 seed, but they're D6. So that's how that ended up happening. And let's go through the rest of the teams now in the Big East. Ozaki finished 4-3. Howard's Grove 3-4 in conference. Utzberg 2-5. Manitowoc Lutheran 1-6, and then Random Lake 0-7. So that rounds out the Big East Conference as a whole. Overall, a really top-heavy conference we saw. And then you got Ozaki and Howard's Grove, kind of like those middle tiers. Maybe you include Utzberg in there. And then, Lutheran and Random Lake are kind of the tail end of the conference. Is that kind of how you'd break it down?
Yeah, for sure. If you look at the Howard's Grove Ozaki, it came down to the last game of the season. They played each other for a playoff spot. So that was those 2 teams are, right in the middle, like it looks like. And then Random Lake is just kind of considerably below the rest of them. And they were last year too. So it was no surprise to me to see them down at the bottom.
Yeah. So these Howard's Grove Tigers, now we're going to talk about, they finished 4-5 on the year. So we're going to go through their schedule. We'll talk about key players. We'll do it all here on the Sports Crew. So let's get right into it. This Howard's Grove team coming into the year, Coach Mark Marino was their coach. Did I say that right? Mark Marino?
Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
Yeah, so he's their coach here. And then they got 2 non-con games they play at. They play Poynette?
Poynette, yep. Week 1.
And they lost 22-23, a 1-point loss there. And it's a heartbreaking loss, but it's non-conference. And I'm sure you were at that game.
I was not, because my brother was out for that game. Otherwise, I probably would have made the trip there. But yeah, that was a tough one to see them lose, especially that close. And they had all kinds of opportunities to win that game. It's one of those woulda, coulda, shoulda games that everyone talks about at the end of the season, but nothing you can do about it at this point.
Yeah, and then the second non-conference game, it's the one I mentioned at the start. They played Valders, and on our Instagram, Jordan_sports group. Make sure to follow if you are not. He predicted a shutout by Valders, and Howard's Grove ended up seeing it. The whole village, basically, let's say, saw it, and we got a boatload of comments coming in once Howard's Grove put up that first touchdown, even from Luke's little brother. So it was interesting, and then game ends 16-6. They beat Valders, and oh boy, comments were coming to the Sports Crew's Instagram. So we got a lot of good comments from the Howard's Grove team, and then some also from other former players as well. So it was some good stuff, all good fun, no problem. But that was a big win for Howard's Grove, getting the first win of the year. But let's go right into the conference games now. They play Utzberg at Utzberg, a 39-16 win there. And were you able to witness that one?
No. Once again, I did not watch that one, but I do know that was a turnover heavy game for Utzberg, and that's kind of what led to the Howard's Grove win there. I think they were decently evenly matched teams had the turnover ratio not been as high as it was, but you take advantage of those turnovers and you're going to get a big win like that.
Yeah, for sure. And then one guy who we'll talk about a lot more later too, Tyler Rittenhouse. What a great running back for the Howard's Grove Tigers. He had 23 attempts, 159 yards, which ended up being 6.9 yards an attempt with 2 touchdowns. And then a guy on the defensive end who we'll also mention later, Jack Schrader, comes up with 2 big sacks and a forced fumble in this game with 7 total tackles as well. So a big game for Schrader as well. And he actually had a fumble return touchdown, I believe in that game it says, is for 24 yards. So big play by little bro.
Yeah, I know they both had great games that night.
Awesome. And then, now 2-1 this Howard's Grove team is, and now they go face Manitowoc Lutheran at Lutheran. And this Lutheran's not really known for football, as we know. They beat Roncalli at the start of the year, but that was Roncalli for football. Not a great story either this year. So 25-14, a nice win. Only 11 points, though. Did you expect that to be more?
Yeah, I did, and I was at this game. I definitely expected Howard's to pull away a little more than they ended up doing, but the Manitowoc Lutheran team wasn't quite as horrible as I was expecting.
Yeah, with Ethan Menges at quarterback, he's a great athlete. We see him play basketball.
Yeah,
he's definitely a force. And then let's just move right into the next game. I mean, now it's Howard's Grove team 3-1, so that's impressive. Not a lot of people expect that coming in at Howard's Grove, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So
no, yeah, I do know at this point in the season, the team morale was really high, and they were really thinking that they might have something here this season. And I will admit, I did not expect them to do that well throughout the first 4 weeks. And quite honestly, they should have started out, 4-0. With that Poinet game. So yeah, it was quite something.
If you look at it like that, of course, and then they run into some of those powerhouse teams in the Big East Conference. Cedar Grove, Belgium to start, a 49-14 loss, and that's a really good Cedar Grove Belgium team, isn't it? And like with Mr. Arrowwood as a quarterback, and he had a big game this game. What was it? Yeah, Logan Arrowwood, 10 completions, and he had 195 yards, four touchdowns, 1 interception, a 118.5 QBR, and Tyler Rittenhouse. He had, what was his rushing? He still had a big game, 17 attempts, 171 yards. So how would you describe Tyler Rittenhouse to somebody who has not watched Tyler Rittenhouse?
I would say Tyler Rittenhouse is, I don't really know who to compare him to, but he runs with pretty good vision, but he just has that mentality that he's going to run through and make a hole when there's not one. And he's got some really good breakaway speed. That kind of we saw with Caden Rathel, who was a running back when I was there. Lot of speed on this Howard's Grove team, and Rittenhouse definitely encompassed that speed aspect. But yeah, he's going to run through a brick wall. I mean, you hand him the ball and there's no hole he's going to make one. So yeah, he's definitely a special runner.
Yeah, for sure. And my other question then with that is, he has some passing attempts. What's going on here? He had some passing yards on the year. Did they run him at quarterback? Can you explain that to some of us?
Yeah, so they definitely did a good amount of wildcat with Rittenhouse in the backfield, as well as with my brother in the backfield. It was primarily, obviously, a running formation when you got Tyler back there, and then Jack would typically lead block in one direction or the other. But he did show off his cannon a little bit.
Yeah, and the stats show that as well. But let's move to the next game now. Howard's Grove plays Random Lake, and we talked about Random Lake being in the bottom of the conference. Easy game for the Tigers, 33-0 victory. They were up 20-0 at half, and it was the Tyler Rittenhouse game. They fed him the ball, and that's really all you have to do. 24 attempts, 195 yards, 3 touchdowns for Rittenhouse. So that's really all you needed there. So the easy win there. I mean, it's Random Lake, nothing to be proud of. I mean, easy win there. So we'll move on. Now, Friday, October 1st, their schedule got a little tough at the end. You had to go Reidsville, Hilbert, and then Ozaukee. So 3 pretty good teams to end the year. I mean, 3 really good teams as well. So we'll start with Reidsville, 15-45 loss. And like you mentioned, this Reidsville team's good. You were at this game, I'm sure. If that's my guess.
Yeah, that was the homecoming game this year. Yep.
Oh, yeah. And they have some really talented athletes at Reidsville. So that's a tough game.
They do. Yeah, a lot of those kids who are playing this year were starting on varsity even when I was still a senior. So they got a lot of veterans on this team who've had a lot of experience.
Yeah, and I'm just looking through some of the names. Cole Ebert. Is it Bren Dvorak?
Yep.
Yeah, and he's talented. We see him in basketball as well, if we're looking at it from that aspect. Rittenhouse was still able to put up some big numbers in the running game, 12 attempts, 104 yards. And then we'll see how. And then Jack Schrader finished with 4 tackles as well, second on the team that game. Just looking through because we'll be mentioning him later. Just got to keep hinting at that. But now coming in, this Howard's Grove team essentially needs one more win, and they're in the playoffs. And they got 2 games left. They got Hilbert and Ozaukee. And, of course, Hilbert, we know it's got to be tough. But they put up a fight, 34-49. They did in a losing effort, though. But that Hilbert team, it was close. It was 21-21
at one point.
It was a very
close game. Yeah, I was going to say it was neck and neck for quite a while.
And I'm just looking through it. It was actually 28-28 at half. So Howard's Grove was really able to put up some points this game. And just looking through the stats as well, it was really the passing game. Is it Peyton Danon? Is that
correct? Yep, Peyton Danon.
18 completions, 25 attempts, and he had 241 yards that game. So he had a big game throwing the ball. And Rittenhouse, yet again, 22 attempts, 117 yards. He was their main source of rushing this game.
Offense.
Yeah, really is.
He's their main source of offense all season, really.
For sure. And then Jack Schrader, he got some runs this game, 6 attempts, 65 yards. So is that something that occasionally happens? Because a lot in the box scores, we didn't see a lot of Jack Schrader runs. So what's going on there?
Yeah, I don't know. Last year he was playing quarterback and definitely was an offensive force. And then this year they kind of just chose to transition him more to defense. And at the beginning of the year, it made sense because he was coming off of illness. And so, only one side of the ball. And I don't know if that then kind of is what carried over into the rest of the season, or if it was coaching decisions that they just decided not to get him the ball. Because, I think he definitely was the second best offensive player on that team. And it's kind of a shame that he didn't get to show that throughout the season, because there were several games where he did not even get a carry, which I kind of thought was ridiculous. But, yeah. Yeah,
I certainly, based on, some of the plays he made in prior years, and even his impact defensively, you would think he'd have some more impact on the offensive side of the ball. So that's really interesting decision by the Howard's Grove coaching staff to not really utilize him in that way. But this Howard's Grove team now sitting 4-4, 1 win, like I said, they're in the playoffs. Now they go to Ozaukee, and this game, basically, you mentioned it, winner makes the playoffs. So big game.
Yeah, it was do or die for both teams there, and you could definitely tell.
Yeah, and it was just a tough start for really Howard's Grove, and they really couldn't dig themselves out of it. They were down 17-0 end of 1, and then there's also a safety actually Ozaukee got. So They were up 24-0 then, and then it was no coming back from that. They put up some points late. They put up a touchdown late, and that really ended. That sadly ended the season for the Tigers. But Rittenhouse, 18 attempts, 136 yards, 7.6 yards an attempt, 3 touchdowns, and then also looking through it, we had Peyton Danon, 9 completions, 20 attempts, 103 yards, and an interception. So passing game really wasn't going in that game. And then looking through, we had Jack Schrader he came out big defensively though, 10 total tackles, and 3 of those were sacks. So that's something else there. And so do you want to talk about anything else in this game?
Not really. I mean, other than that, it's just sad to watch my brother play his last game because you know how that feels, going out there on your senior night. But I'm just glad he had a chance to play for playoffs. My senior year we were 2 and whatever, so our last game was just kind of for funsies. But it would have been nice to see him get that win and get that extra week in there. But
yeah, it certainly would have been great to see your brother do that as well. And I want to talk now. We're gonna transition. We're gonna talk about conference leaders, and that's gonna really lead us to conference awards. But just to wrap up Howard's Grove season, through like we said, 3-4 in conference, 4-5 overall, 182 points scored, 204 allowed. My bad. To wrap up for the Tigers, finished middle of the conference, 1 win away, like I said, and yeah. So let's get into the leaders now. Passing yards, we had Logan Arrowwood from Cedar Grove, Belgium, 2,300 over 2,300 yards passing. Ethan Menges then for the Lancers had 1,017, and then Brennan Dvorak had 997 passing yards. And then rushing yards, we had Reed Breckheimer finish with 1,678 yards, and then we had Tyler Rittenhouse of Howard's Grove finish with over 1,300 yards, and then Brennan Dvorak had 1,177 yards rushing as well. And then the 3 receivers, Sam Pifer, number 1, with 1,283, Gabe Egan with 602, and then Brett Ham, so with 469. So it was really Sam Pifer's receiving yard leader race to lose. And do you have anything you want to mention about Sam Pifer? I know you guys played him a lot in back of your day.
Yeah, I mean, he was really young back when I was playing, and at that time they had Michael Navis, who was their primary receiver. But yeah, no, he's a great athlete. I've watched him play basketball, football. I've seen it all, and yeah, he's quite the athlete. So it's no surprise to me that he has that title, especially with Arrowwood slinging the ball. So
for sure. And now I want to talk about players of the year for defense and offense. We're gonna talk about conference players of the year. So usually how it works, sure. I'm not sure how it works in the Big East. Can you clarify? They have an offensive player of the year, a defensive player of the year, and then overall a player of the year. Is that how it is in the Big East as well?
Yeah.
Okay. So with that being said, we're gonna start defense, and I got some candidates for you. I'm gonna mention here. I have Brett Ham of Ozaki finished with the most tackles in the Big East Conference with 125 total tackles. And then Reed Breckheimer as well. I'm going to mention from Hilbert with 99 total tackles. And then I'm going to mention Jack Schrader from Howard's Grove. He finished with 13 sacks, 41 total tackles. I mean, he's playing defensive end, I believe. Was that his primary position?
Correct. Yep, defensive end.
So I want to hear, can you give someone who has not watched Jack Schrader play before on defense, kind of how is he as a player on defensive end? Is he kind of is he a shifty defensive end, or is he like a guy who's going to power through his man? Who's Jack Schrader?
He can really do it both, but I think the biggest thing is his speed and just desire to get to the quarterback or get to the ball and, make that play. Jack's biggest kind of, I would say, advantages is kind of the intangible stuff, because I did get to play with him for 2 years, and he's just a great sideline guy. I mean, he can change a game just by his attitude and tone with the other guys on the sideline. And not to take away from his ability, because that's he's a great player on paper as well, but yeah, his intangibles just on and off the field as a leader and getting the team to kind of rally behind an idea. is quite impressive. But yeah, just to list a couple other stats that you forgot to mention, he had 33 solo tackles, 21 tackles for a loss, and the next closest in the conference was 16 tackles for a loss. The next closest sacks in the conference was only 4. And he had that fumble return for a touchdown. And so, yeah, I mean, I think statistically he has the stats to take that spot, and anyone who's played with him or played against him has got a pretty good idea that he could definitely take that title.
Yeah, I really like what you said there. I mean, yeah, like you mentioned, he does have these. He has the paper stats. He has it all on paper. But the stuff that's not on the stat, that does not show up on the stat sheet, is just, it's something else to have both those things. The intangibles. That's great to hear. And I'm rooting for Jack Schrader as the Big East Defensive Player of the Year. I was kind of convinced. I mean, just looking at the stats, but I mean, I'm 100% in now. So we'll make Jack Schrader our Big East Defensive Player of the Year for Jordan and Drew, the sports crew. Hopefully that happens in the conference as well. And then let's transit. Cool. Yeah, it really would. And let's transition now into the Offensive Player of the Year. So there's some candidates here. I mean, we could go and mention Brendan Dvorak right away stands out to me for the Reidsville Panthers. And then looking at it as well, I mean, you can include guys like Sam Pifer, Logan Arrowwood, and maybe even like Reed Breckheimer as well. I'm probably leaning here Brendan Dvorak as Offensive Player of the Year. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely is up there. I like Sam Pifer and I like Logan Arrowwood as well, though, too.
Yeah, both those guys, or all three of those guys we mentioned here, just great athletes as well. And Logan Arrowwood at quarterback had 13 or more passing yards than the next guy, Ethan Menges. So that's tough there. Yeah. And then you got to look at Brendan Dvorak's total yards. He's over 2,000 as well. So it's really a toss up. You could make Dvorak maybe Player of the Year. You could give Arrowwood or Pifer Offensive Player of the Year. It's a
lot of it comes down to just kind of what you weigh above something else statistically, because I can't say that I really know, any of them other than what these stats are that I can see here.
Yeah, for sure. So. And that's why we're trying to do the Big East, the Big East special. We got to spread the word of Big East football, something that has not been covered much on it. No. I don't even know anywhere, because I mean, we cover Eastern Wisconsin Conference. We cover that on our podcast. So with that, I mean, Robert Shimmick does a great job covering it as well. So we really get to do a lot of collabs with him, but covering the Big East is something that has not been done. So that's our goal this episode. And yeah, so we'll leave all those guys. We're not going to choose exact Player of the Year or Offensive Player of the Year. We chose our Defensive Player of the Year, but we'll leave those up in the air for the coaches to decide. But let's move into the playoffs here, Luke. And we got some pretty good matchups like we hinted at the start of the episode. So we'll start in D7 right away. And like you mentioned, Hilbert got the one over Reidsville. So that was an interesting choice there. And then we saw...
Yeah, that was shocking to a lot of people, I think.
And rightfully so. In D7, you'd think Reidsville would have gotten it there, but Reidsville's doing just fine. They played Johnson Creek, the 7 seed, and they were the 2 seed, 55-13 win. Now they play Catholic Central at Reidsville. And then going up, we have Hilbert. They played Cambria Friesland, I believe. These are some tough D7 names. They won 41-6. And now Hilbert plays Blackhawk Warren, Illinois, Saturday, October 30th at 1 p.m. So that's an interesting time.
I thought that was quite interesting.
I see the Warren, Illinois, so maybe it's probably a hike for a drive, so maybe they moved it there for the sake of maybe getting back right on time, like at a normal time. I'm thinking something like that, but we'll see. And then the winner, assuming both these teams will win, we will see a Hilbert-Reidsville matchup to win regionals. So that's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, that will be cool to see 2 Big East teams there going head-to-head in the playoffs. That'll be quite interesting.
That's going to be some must-see football at Hilbert High School. That'll be and that'll be Friday, November 5th. So keep that on the calendar.
I got to say, I definitely like Reidsville in that game. I really do.
I know
it's at Hilbert, but I really think Reidsville is going to come away with that one.
Yeah, and just looking at through some stats, and I mean, I've seen Reidsville play. They're a tough football team as well. I like Brendan Dvorak and the Reidsville Panthers in that game. But let's move to Division 6. So Sierra Belgium is in D6, so they're not with the D7 schools there. So they got the 2 seed, and Kenosha St. Joseph Catholic got the 1 in their region. So looking through it, Cedar Grove Belgium played number 7 Mineral Point, 36-32 win. So that was actually really close for a 7-2 game. And then we saw St. Mary's Springs play Ozaki. So Ozaki being the other playoff team, they lost 38-0 to St. Mary's Springs. So now that sets up a 3-2 game, St. Mary's Springs versus Cedar Grove Belgium. Do you know much about St. Mary's Springs this year?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that they're quite the dynasty that they have been recently, but I do know they have a great tackle, 4-star recruit, 3rd in the state, ranked player. So, I mean, I think they're going to pound the ball behind him, and they'll be looking all right. I don't think Cedar Grove's got much of a chance in that one.
Oh, so we got St. Mary's Springs here, the 3 being the 2?
Yep,
awesome.
I think so.
I like it. And then we'll just go up to see who the winner of this game would play. Kenosha St. Joseph Catholic, like I mentioned, 49-0 win. And they will face number 4 Waterloo, who came out with a 62-36 win over Partyville. So the winner of that game then will face St. Mary's Springs or Cedar Grove Belgium. So that wraps up the playoffs there. And Luke, you got anything else you want to add?
Not really. I mean, is there anything else you want me to talk about?
I mean, that's really all we had planned today. So you want to shout yourself out?
Yeah, sure. My Instagram is Shrades_11. I'm not incredibly active on there, but if you give me a follow, I suppose I'll follow you back.
Yeah, you better follow him, guys. You heard it there. And then for myself, you guys know the drill. Drew Skyberg, DREWSKYBERG, Instagram, Twitter, everywhere you name it. And then also the podcast, we got to shout it out. You got to get your sweatshirts first. Sunday, October 31st is when the sweatshirt sale ends. If you've not bought a sweatshirt yet, buy a sweatshirt. $25 only. Blue, navy blue, white, and black are the colors. Some good stuff there. And then also the Facebook, Jordan Drew the Sports Crew. Instagram, Jordan Drew _Sports Crew. And then YouTube, Jordan Drew the Sports Crew. So yeah, that'll wrap up this episode. Thank you all for listening to yet another episode of Jordan Drew the Sports Crew, the perfect podcast for you.